distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Kasalelia and good evening. My name is Yolanda Joab Mori, and I am from the beautiful islands of the Federated States of Micronesia. I'm completely honored and humbled to be here tonight to be able to share with you a little bit of my story and the journey that has brought me here. The Micronesian islands, like islands throughout the Pacific, are some of the most stunning, most untouched, mystical places on Earth. Origins of countless beautiful languages, magical culture, and deeply rooted heritage, as well as home to the friendliest, warmest, most generous, open-hearted, colorful, vibrant people you will ever meet. It's the kind of place where even if it appears we don't have much, we'll give you everything. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, which makes it the kind of place that no matter where you go, you always have a good neighbor. The kind of place where the sense of community still exists, and not just within each other, but outwards to the rest of the world as well. It's the kind of place that can make anyone feel at home. What these islands may lack in size, we make up for in heart and so much more. And so to be from a place like this, to have the privilege of calling these islands my home, the matter of getting involved in the fight against climate change was never a question. It was the natural convergence of everything that matters to me. So when people ask me why I do what I do, my initial answer is, well, why not? It is the biggest threat to my islands, my people, and our way of life. And so since I was 20 years old, I've been co-leading a climate change education program across my region. So beyond the reports I read from the IPCC or UNFCCC or NOAA or NASA or whatever acronym there is, I've been reading the signs at home, living it. From the back-to-back typhoons and droughts that are intensifying, to the high tides that keep getting higher, to the intrusion into our freshwater sources, to the beaches that once were, to the reefs that are losing its color, all of this jeopardizes everything about what makes these islands home. And so I've been engaged with my youth and communities, trying to create solutions, raising awareness, and leading projects to increase our resilience to climate change. But there's an entire universe of truth that exists behind our indigenous knowledge, the spirituality of it, and our connection to our land and ocean being more than just resources to us, but a part of us. And all of the power that is in that. I am awake enough and aware enough to recognize how much I have left to learn. I cannot honor my ancestors and everything their legacy means without recognizing that my voyage still has a long ways to go. And so in recognizing this, before leaving home for Edinburgh, I sought wisdom and spoke to my elders. Before I left, I spoke to a traditional leader from my village, whom I greatly respect. I spent time with my grandmother, because yes, while I have the ability to seek and investigate and question and listen and engage and then come here and attempt to put it all into English, the true champions, the true heroes, are people like my traditional chiefs and grandmother back home, whom have been stewards of indigenous knowledge, carrying it throughout the generations, which has always been an inherent part of our resilience long before I took any stage. So out of a place of profound respect and humility, it just didn't feel right to start this conversation, to tell this story without reconnecting to that first. So I had to preface and stand in that truth first, because I do think a big part of what fuels this climate movement and the amazing wave of Pacific activists, advocates, movers, shakers, defenders, warriors like me, is the fact that a lot of us are trying to grasp on to what's left of our ancestors' legacy, because we are at risk of losing what little is left to the hands of climate change. Because we and every generation that comes after us deserves the right to get to know that part of our identity. My home island of Pohnpei, its name translates to upon an altar, which is our language upholding just how sacred and holy this island is. It is a reflection of how we view the land itself and how it's held in the highest regard. When our first navigators reached Pohnpei, they made a promise, establishing our first constitution not for man's relationship with each other, but for our relationship with nature. And one of the declarations is, "Gnroroke irapensa," which speaks of the responsibility of the people to be proud stewards of this land and to protect and preserve it at all costs. It was as if they knew something would threaten it down the line. And so this is me trying to do what I can to protect and preserve it at all costs. Because our land, our islands, we look at it more than just space or real estate or property. It is a part of us. It's what makes us who we are. Our clans, our livelihoods, our sustenance, everything all derives from it. There's always been a natural harmony with our environment that exists in every strand of our traditional practices. From harvesting to fishing, to weaving, to chanting, to dancing, to navigating, our people have been reading the stars and crossing oceans long before anyone was reading maps. We depend on this land, but it depends on us too. We are supposed to be its caretakers, and not just us with Pompe, but with all of us and every place that we call home. Because what the first Pompeians, like indigenous people throughout the world, understood is that we did not inherit this earth from our parents, but we are borrowing it from our children. Which brings me to my biggest why, my children. When I stepped into this field 7 years ago, I knew I found a purpose with passion that I never thought could get any more meaningful or personal. Until I became a mother. 2 years ago, I had my son, and everything that all of this means suddenly had a face and a name and a laugh and potential and dreams and a future. So going back to that question of why I do this is why. I'm chasing what I believe in as possible, and together with people like you in this room, people who have a seat at the table, who have access, who have the ability to lead change, I know we can make that possibility a reality. And so to end my time with you tonight, I'd like to end with this spoken word piece, a narrative of this chase, and how it weaves throughout the generations and what it all means to me. I hope you like it. I studied the lines in her face. She is 90 years old, she is 90 years strong. I study the lines in her face, every indent, every fracture, every canyon of wisdom around her raindrop-tired eyes. I wonder, has she ever known rest? I see it now. Those lines in her face, they are forming her signature. Her handwriting lives in her skin, storytelling of all the Micronesian womanhood wonderfulness that she is, because she is magic. She is full of power and possibility, the unbroken symbol of a near century's worth of resilience that no amount of colonialism, no amount of erasure, no amount of anything could ever step on, because she is the rock of strength that every island family has ever known. That mama we all got with no filter, no apologies, and no excuses. You see, she was the first line of defense. Her and every warrior of indigenous knowledge and roots, the truth speaker and healer. Now I am the last line of defense, the mover and shaker, for she and everything her generation represents, for my son and everything his generation represents, for the baby in my belly and everything that a mother represents. Have you ever seen a Pacific sunset? I've been chasing sunsets for as long as I can remember, gone halfway around the world singing my story, chasing them sunsets. The only difference I see between the ones I see back home and the ones of faraway lands is nothing. We are covered in the same sun, but don't feel it all the same, now do we? I'm chasing sunsets because I have to, because the fire inside me won't let me sit down, won't let me stay quiet. Nona whispers, pray, my child. So I drop to my knees and I send up my prayers. I wonder if they had to cross through the cold smoke of factories first, but I can't stay on my knees for long because there's lightning in my bones and an ocean in my chest. I stepped off that plane with salt water on my back, a flower in my hair, and that prayer I just whispered before I took this stage, before I rose from my knees. Because in order to chase sunsets, you gotta stand up. And so I'm standing here chasing sunsets, but I realized that I could never catch them. They fade away when I spoke out, when I took the lines from her face, the handwriting of my grandmother's signature that wrote these very words. I'm chasing sunsets but can't catch them, because I am the sunrise, the emerging light breaking the dark, the promise of a new day, the hope that binds me and you together. I'm chasing sunsets because I have to. Thank you for listening.